the thief and murderer Allison Wells. Sent 5 human souls to heaven. If you see this woman, do not confront her.
Robbing a bank, especially in movies, always seems so sort of romantic. And you root for the robbers, not for the bank. It's like a home viewer. I'm wondering if you guys have thoughts about sort of why that is.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's like the nameless, faceless organization. It's easy to demonize. And I think that's kind of probably Allison's justification in some ways. And she's really neglecting to mention the collateral damage that ensues. And I think it is kind of also a part of Eugene's journey. I mean, he's kind of experienced bank robberies and stuff the way it's been depicted in his comic books. And again, it plays to this bigger theme of like our fantasy versus our reality, and growing up and kind of being hit in the face with reality. And it's a pretty ugly thing to see a lot of the time. So it's pretty integral. It's an integral moment in this scene where Eugene actually takes part in a bank robbery, and it is not like in, you know, the things he's read or fantasized before. I mean, it's real, it's damaging, it doesn't feel good. And yeah, again, that just, I guess it's a part of his journey of kind of like losing his innocence in this film.
Yeah, I think that I mean, you know, it's a classic sort of like character and struggle, especially with the banks. I mean, the 30s were a period that there wasn't too much empathy for them, for the banks, at least during the Dust Bowl when everyone was getting, you know, foreclosed on. And so, yeah, part of it is a part of that mythology, of sort of the mythology of the West and of the Great Depression and all of that. And that's where a lot of our gangster mythology comes from. But I think that there's also something about people will always feel connected to a story about people who are trying to make a new situation in their life, you know, and it was a time historically, politically, where there was so much pressure on this community and on this family, economically, geographically, environmentally, that you do sort of start looking for ways out and looking for a way to survive and thrive and not live in the sort of fictions of your parents and of those things. So yeah, I think that that's why the kind of story is always throughout cultures resonated.
Both Allison and Eugene are trying to sort of get away from their everyday lives in this like drudgery and horrible situation, and there's the situation with their parents. How much of that do you think is like a product of the period and the location, and how much of that is like, well, young people always want to do something different than their families, something, I want to strike it big in Hollywood, or I want to, you know, whatever that thing is.
I think approaching it and reading the script, it was a bit of both of that, and seeing this character coming into his life at that specific time, it was a big part of it too. I think there are a number of different things we can draw upon for reasons why he felt the need to do it, but you know, he also felt a responsibility. I think, you know, there was he wants to sort of support his family. You get the sense that he wants to be a good man, but then the struggle and of how to achieve that is very clear. So when this opportunity comes around, it sort of feels like a naive no-brainer. But then bless him, he sort of falls in love, and I think that takes him all the way to the bitter end. You know.
Yeah, it also makes me think too about sort of the unreliability or the reliability of narrator. Like, we're seeing 3 different sort of stories here, and like, which one of those stories is true? Is there really like an absolute truth?
Well, one of the things that was really exciting or felt emotionally rich in the story was the idea that the reliability of the narrator wasn't going to come from whether they were there and saw everything, but it was going to come from whether they could emotionally connect with the story of the brother. She feels the same absence from his departure that he felt from his father's departure, and in that sort of like inheritance of absence also comes an ability to tell that story in a way that is maybe more honest, because she's aware, she knows what that original sort of seed or original sort of wound was. She felt it at the same time. So there was something about that felt like a new sort of way to approach that story, in a way that felt like it could emotionalize a lot of the sort of just unknowing of what was real or not.
Can you talk to me about sort of shooting the dust storm scene? And I mean, obviously some of it's CGI, but it's visually stunning. And to think about what people who live there had to go through all the time is just incredible.
Yeah, and there's no more. You kind of don't realize it until you make a dust storm. Not one of the huge ones, but until you have, Travis fighting for his life, getting blasted by like 3 747s worth of, wind power and 3 states worth of dirt at him. Then you realize, like, oh, this was brutal. Like, this sucks.
I mean, what a champion he was. He really
was a
took that
champion.
well, didn't he?
He kept asking for more. He was like, it doesn't look real enough. You got to hit me with some more. All right, dude, we're going to. And it's amazing. It's so much better for it. But it was really stressful part of it. How do you sort of like communicate the scale of it? There are people who didn't believe that it's real. You know what I mean? That this is what they look like, that there were dust storms that were this big, that this is. And it just sort of shows how quickly we sort of forget our own ecological F-ups. And that this was really the one of the craziest man-made natural disasters in the history of humankind, and it's something that we're going to top ourselves soon, probably. But there's something about that for the backstory, which is also that, when people who are living in those times, it's not all about, we didn't want to make poverty porn either. These are people who are conscious of things besides the fact that they're struggling. You know what I mean? They have dreams and hopes and ways through this. So it was integral in kind of creating that pressure cooker, making sure that it felt right and real, and that the scale was sort of just. And we had incredible VFX people helping us with that at Crafty Apes, who did the ones that were visual effects.